Okay, so this is going to be a video guide on how to assemble the 1/100 MP1 runner of the Emotion Manipulator hands for some of the Master Grade kits that exist. This specific one is going to be Master Grade Extreme Strike Freedom. For whatever reason, there aren't really many videos available showing how to set these up. I don't know why. Certainly not any proper dedicated guides. I don't really edit videos, so this will be a boring, probably time-consuming VOD, but it will serve as hopefully proper showing how to do all this. I have built one kit with these before, the Master Grade 3.0 RX-78-2. So I do have a little bit of experience with them. The only issue I had with that previously was on the second hand I assembled, one of the fingers came with a ball joint near the knuckle, and I was able to get it back into place and didn't have any issues after that. So yeah, people have requested I make a proper dedicated video for how I do this, or did this, and hopefully this helps people out. I will try to have the title of the video, hashtags in the description, and other stuff be set in such a way that it's hopefully a bit easier to find than the video I found. The only video I know of for this was by a YouTuber named Too Old for Toys. The video's like over 10, 12 years old at this point. They were building the Master Grade New Gundam Verka. Anyway, so here we are. This is the start of the instructions. Here is what I have assembled so far. So there are both of the arms up to this point. I have also prepared the handguard armor parts. Some of the instructions for this is a bit confusing. So before I start, I will actually show all the instructions in their entirety to better give an idea of stuff. So you can see this one right here, of course. It goes to this one. Then it goes to this one. And then after all of that, you go down to here and do this stuff. Then you get that ready, you get that ready, and then up here give some more information about how this functions. And then lastly, it shows this. Now, I want to indicate something. This step was not present on the Master Grade 3.0 RX-78-2. I did not have to do this step. I was able to use the original part that you see here. This part that it's saying is the first step to take out. I did not have to do that. So this is entirely new to me. I'm not sure if any of the other kits that have this runner utilize the hands this way, but this one certainly does. So that will be fun to figure out. And of course, the last step is here, the movable right hand is this one right here, and then you just attach it. Then you rinse and repeat for the same thing. It looks like they do not show instructions on assembling the movable left hand, so visually all we see is the right hand, I believe. So you would just, mirror what you do for the left hand, I guess, as far as the instructions go. So a little information about these. What are the Emotion Manipulator hands? So as far as I can tell, these are an updated version. There was another version of this previously. I forget which kits exactly used it. I believe the Master Grade RX-78-2 version 2.0 possibly used the previous version of these, but essentially these are very similar to the fully posable hands that you see on perfect grade model kits. So that's essentially, as far as I understand, what these are, but they're in 1/100 scale. Now I don't know if they are just literally scaled down from 160 to 1/100. That's essentially what they are. So why are they so annoying? Why do people not like them? So because this is 1/100 scale and not 160 scale, all the parts are smaller. That's obvious, right? So because how physics works, the amount of force and stuff, it might be relative to linear scaling, but it means that it's easier to break these and they're more fragile. Also, trying to see if moving these around will show stuff more easily. So each of these fingers has ball joints to go into the base of the hand, or what I'll call the knuckles, as it were. And so those are notoriously easy to fall out of place, regardless of how you're moving them and stuff. The problem is the shape of this interior part, the base of the hand where the knuckle sockets go into, is such that they feel very loose if the fingers come out. So it can be hard to get them to go back in and stay there. Also, again, because of how small they are and how thin everything is, it's just really easy to break some stuff. And due to the nature of how these are made, it may not be easy to fix what you break, shall we say. So, yeah. A lot of people also just don't really like them in general for proposing model kits. If you can tell, there is an opening here, and you can actually use these to hold items. This part right here that sticks out can move to be in that to close it up, or you can stick that out, and that's something you can use to hold stuff. So it slots in beam sabers, rifles, you know, all sorts of different stuff. And so the idea is, while you can use these to hold things, it will not be as stable a structure as a static hand that cannot move this way. And you can have some difficulty getting the fingers to line up properly, you know, like properly grip the rifle or whatever, you know? So there are some issues with that as well. And again, because of, you know, the size of these and how thin some of this stuff is, it can be really easy to just break something. So these are some of the reasons why people in the community don't really like these hands. And even simply following these instructions and getting them set up properly, it can be a bit of a struggle, or so I have been told. Anyway, so I'm going to start now. So here is my approach. So first off, I'll just follow it, and it says to do the right hand first. It wants you to also cut out the left hand as well, but I will not do so. I will only cut out the right hand, which is this one right here. And so I'll do that the way I did it the last time, and I'll sort of explain why I'm doing it that way, and so on and so forth. So first off, I'm going to do something a bit weird. I'm going to cut all the way to the edge. I'll just do that for everything. And I'll just go around like this. Okay, this is the last one, so I'm gonna hold on to this. It should be free. So looks like one of these isn't fully cut. Let's solve that here. Okay, and there we go. So that is one hand completely out. And here we have it. And because I also cut off where it indicates the number, we know which orientation is quote-unquote correct as well. Because it can be easy to sort of forget that. Of course, then you'll have to pay attention where the holes are and all that other stuff. Anyway, so here it is. Now, pay attention rather, to how all these different, I'll call them gates, are attached to the parts. If you notice, there are places where one gate is attached to multiple spots. So for example, this right here is attached to 3 different spots. And some of those spots are on separate appendages, right? So the idea with how I approach this, first off I'll just read this and I'll explain what I do. Let me trying to move this so I can center this better. Checkpoint. Each joint of red circle moves. When moving the joints of each finger, which is shown in the darker gray color, be sure to move in the direction of the arrow. Moving them in the opposite direction may damage the parts. So that should be obvious. Your fingers are only going to move one way intentionally. Moving them the other way, you don't want to do that too much, or you might hurt yourself. So same logic behind this. So that's going to be obvious anyway. But so that's essentially what it's saying. So what I do, I forget which finger I start with or started with, but basically what I do is I only focus on one finger at a time and try to adjust things as much as possible on whichever finger that is, without removing anything else. So for example, we see right here this finger, you see how this gate is also attached to this finger, and you see this gate is still attached at the fingertip. So we can take full advantage of these being here to assist in this process. So basically what you're trying to do with all of this is you're trying to loosen up every single spot that can move. And once every single spot that can move is loosened, all the way down to the ball socket, where, like I said, the knuckle sockets, whatever you want to call them, go into the base of the hand, then at that point, you're okay to start orienting the hand the way you're supposed to, as described later on in the different sections of this. So the idea then is to do that process for every single finger as you go, and only remove gates and essentially nubs when you absolutely have to. That's sort of the approach I do. And by this gate right here, holding these together, it keeps things very stable. So you're not gonna have random things starting to move on you when you're working on one thing. You won't have to have something in the way when you're trying to orient something else, blah, blah, blah. And that's sort of the approach I take with this. So I believe I want to start with this finger right here. And again, you just sort of have to pay attention. So this finger can only move like this, right? In this specific orientation. So it can only move like this. So first off, oh, and here's the other really important thing. And I'll just show with my own finger. So we want to get every single joint loose, right? But you don't want to put unnecessary stress on the fingers or the hand itself. So what you do is you try to keep only the part that you need to move able to move. So I try to hold on to one part of it and then only move the thing I want to move, right? So if I only want the very tip to move, then I have to hold on to the rest of it. And again, that's where these gates are holding onto all the different parts are very beneficial, and why I try to take advantage of those being there. And that's sort of my thought process and how I approach this, is how can I do what it's telling me to do while applying as little force as possible or as little stress as possible for all the different parts of it as I go. And that's sort of the approach that I take with it. So as you can see, because of how all of this is set up, there are 2 joints that can currently move without needing to do anything else. So very fingertip, and then the joint underneath that. So basically this joint right here, and then this joint right here. Those are the only 2 joints that can move right now. So what I would do, like I said, is hold it so that this joint can't move, and then loosen this one, right? And then, you know, rinse and repeat. Then only hold it to here so you can loosen that one. You get the idea. And that, again, is the approach that I try to take with these, in the hopes that it helps. So yeah. So let me try to hold on to this here. I will do my best to have what I do be visible. It may not always be visible, but like I said, I'll try to do my best. So again, I'm going to hold on to this in hopefully such a way that only the very tip can move. Then I just, you know, lightly move it. Very, very lightly. I'm applying very little pressure. Basically, I just push up against it, and it'll start moving eventually. Again, I'm not trying to apply too much force at all. You can be as slow as you want with this, because it's not like you're trying to do it as fast as possible. You're just trying to get it loose, you know? And then there it is. And I'm also, as you can notice, I'm not trying to, you know, use this, because that's going to apply unnecessary stress. I'm also leaving it there for right now. So there we go. And also do multiple passes. So it's not just you've moved it forward, you moved it backward, and you're done. You move it forward and backward, you know, like 2, 3, 4 times. That's how you know you're good. Also, if you notice, it goes down to this position, right? But you'll notice that the gate is now hitting this, which means it cannot go down any farther. So at this point is when I would consider removing this entire gate. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So this is the Godhand SPN 120L nippers. These are the left-handed versions, basically, of the SPN 120, because I am left-handed. So go ahead as close as possible. And there we go. So that's the cut for that. Another thing you can take full advantage of with the way everything is held in place by the gates is if you want to do any sort of cleanup to any of the nubs that you remove, you can do so as you go, depending on what sort of tools you have and whatnot and what your process is. Because, again, this will be the least stress that will be on the parts. And again, do not rely too much on these gate sections themselves holding these on. If you can reinforce that with your hand or fingers somehow, definitely do that. But let me put this up here. Let me go ahead and put glove on, because I do want to go ahead and clean this up. Now, I'm going to be explaining everything I do for this specific hand. I may not explain everything again for the other hand, but I do want to make sure my entire thought process, the logic behind it, my actual approach to it, and why is fully covered for at least one of these hands. And again, it's going to be a very slow burn. This isn't going to be a super fast or long thing. But if you want to do something right, you're gonna need to take your time to do it. And if your ultimate goal is to have motion manipulator hands that have no issues whatsoever and look good and you can use them for whatever you want, no problem, you're gonna need to respect what they are, understand how they all function, and just handle them accordingly. So if you don't want a super long video, totally understand. You can always, you know, use the fast forward or the speed up thing. So I'm trying to hold on to the finger. So I'm supporting it properly. Then I can go with this. Try to get that done. Now, I just do straight builds for context. I'm not planning to do any crazy custom painting or custom finish or top coat or anything. I just do a straight build. I don't care about nub marks and stuff. I'm not going to do any sanding or anything like that because that would require a top coat. I just use nippers and then a hobby knife, and so that's why I don't really care too much. All I care about is it being flush. That's about it. So next I'll check with my finger, make sure it feels okay. I think that is satisfactory. So there we go. That is, now that we have removed the gate and nub and everything, we can now fully extend this one joint, this fingertip joint. So let's do that now. Again, I'm not being super fast with it. I'm not putting much force on it. Just making sure the other joint can't move. And I'm not applying unnecessary stress to the rest of it. There we go. That is now fully retracted, or whatever the technical term would be. It cannot go any farther that way. So then, let's see. Again, not trying to apply too much force here. Just a little bit. There we go. That is now fully back in place. I felt vibrations of an internal click or stop mechanism, sort of thing. Like you can definitely feel that it's not going to move anymore, if you know what I mean. So I can definitely feel that where the part underneath. I really can't easily show, sadly. But there's a part underneath the finger, and I can feel when that has extended properly. So now, just go a couple more times, I guess. You can sort of tell as you go when it's getting looser, and once it's looser enough, you can more freely do it. Again, just be careful. Make sure the force you're applying is in the correct direction and not angled slightly or anything. So that is that one joint done. So next will be the next joint. This joint. That's the next thing to work on. So again, same process. You make sure you hold on to the finger below where that joint is. Make sure it can't move. Now there will be one additional thing I suggest doing here, or how I do it. Because this top joint can also move, and depending on which finger it is and which way it can move and stuff, you will sort of run into issues where, sort of like how the gate that used to be here got in the way of it being able to move, some of the other fingers may also get in the way. So again, my approach is to do as much as you can without removing things. And once you've done as much as you can and you have to start removing things, you may sort of just rinse and repeat, do as much as you can once something's been removed, and go on from there. You know, so that's sort of how I do that. So without removing anything else, I should be able to move this. It may not be able to move all the way. And sometimes, like I was saying with stuff getting in the way, since you already have a joint that can move, being able to move that sometimes reduces the surface area of this enough to be able to move farther and allow you to loosen up a bit more. So again, I'm holding it underneath that, and I'll just move this out of the way first, because I need my finger to be able to get to there. Again, just slowly apply pressure. The hardest time to move it will be the first time. I am trying to move it. I'm not applying a stupid amount of force though. So I'm thinking that possibly this gate is getting in the way, and if I can remove enough of it, I will gain access to more surface area of this that I can use with my fingers. Another thing you can do, of course, is try to use tools. I'm trying to avoid that because the tactile feel of your fingers gives a much more accurate sense of the amount of force used and in what direction. So let me go ahead, remove some of this. Okay, so again, hold on to that. Try to do that. It's close to being able to move. There we go, it moved. That was a bit more force than I was hoping to use. And as you can tell, it basically immediately extended all the way, which I'm not sure if that's good or bad, but it is what it is. Okay, so then very slowly get it to go back into place. And now it's locked into place. I don't really know how to explain it too well. My mind's not oriented in a way to be able to explain it properly or have enough knowledge of the internal structures of these things, but basically there's a range of movement where it can move easily, and once you get outside that range, the friction is increased and you can sort of quote-unquote lock it in place in this fully extended state. So there it is. Again, if I'm able to move this all the way down, I have enough space to then move it all the way over here. And it cannot move anymore. Hey Johnny, how's it going? I'm building the Emotion Manipulator hands, and I'll be turning this into a video guide later. Currently working on the right hand and the very first finger. Okay, so again, you just want to make sure you adjust these multiple times to ensure they are loose the way you want, that they won't give you issues later on. And if you notice, if I try to do this, the fingertip gets in the way. So again, that's why I prefer to go ahead and do that. And again, regardless of which joint you're trying to move, to reduce the amount of force applied where you don't need it to be applied, make sure to hold below what you want to move, so that way then you can freely move it, like that. Oh, well, have fun with that. Last time I tried to donate, I nearly passed out, just sitting there waiting for my turn. It was a big enough deal for them that like 3 or 4 people were attending to me, and I wasn't able to donate and I had to leave. And I've not tried since then. Okay, so that is the first 2 joints done. At this point, the only thing left that we can loosen on this finger is the ball and socket joint at the base of the hand with what I would call the knuckle. And so this is where we have to decide what to do next, right? So if the idea is to approach it where you don't remove anything until you absolutely have to, then it would be a good idea to go ahead and loosen up some of the other stuff. Now these two fingers specifically, they are facing each other, and it will be difficult to properly loosen all the joints all the way without removing these right here. Similarly, this is going to kind of get in the way a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this and probably remove this to free up more movement area. Trying to orient it in a good way for this to cut well. Okay, so those are that. Let me go ahead and put this back here. So next, I'll do what I did before. Get out cut resistant glove, my hobby knife. I will inspect where these nubs were removed and try to clean that up. I can feel with my finger that there is a jagged edge, so all I'm trying to do is remove that jagged edge and smooth it down a little bit. I did my best with the cuts. There's only so much you can do. So again, try to hold as much of this as possible. Yes, they are. They are also in some other kits. The Master Grade Verka New Gundam, the Sinanju Stein, the white one, and there's another kit that's a Verka that they come with. Then they come with this kit, the Master Grade Extreme Strike Freedom, and then there's a slightly different version of these that comes with the Master Grade Rickdom 2.0, which is a kit I have and bought to do this video guide with without realizing that Master Grade Extreme comes with them. Now, I'm not sure if any newer kits have these or not, and my knowledge of what kits from Premium Bandai might have them is completely zero. I have no idea. As far as what you could buy on the shelf at any store, given they have stock from a reprint, those are the kits that would likeliest be to find and have them. So hopefully this guide comes in handy for people. And again, I'm just one dude. I'm not super experienced at any of this. This is my 38th kit I've ever built. And I don't really watch video guides on how to do all this stuff. I just sort of figure it out as I go. But I wouldn't be surprised if someone else somewhere uses a similar approach to me and there just isn't an easy to find video of it in English. I would find it hard to believe I'm the only one in the world who does it this way. I would find that hard to believe. There's so many people who build these kits. I can't be the only one doing it this way. Alright, that feels much better now. So a little bit of an edge here. Kinda got it. Trying to get a better look at it so I can clear it out better. I'm having issues with this one, for whatever reason. There's this one part that just won't go away. It's like stuck. Anyway, we'll say that's good now. If you notice, some of these joints have already moved a little bit from my attempts to clean that up, and that's okay. So again, the idea is to hold on to finger below the joint you want to move, and then slowly move that joint. So that's now fully out, and I can move it to be fully in. Wow. Again, don't apply too much force. Be slow with it. So that should be that one okay for now. Next, I'll start on this one. So fully extended. Now it's all the way in. Trying to get my finger in there. Easily move it. These feel quite posable now. Alright, so next will be the next joint. Again, I will try to go ahead and do that. Reduce size, and it moves. And if you're struggling with any of this, don't hesitate to change the orientation. Maybe try with a different hand, which one's holding it, which one's moving it. Find what works for you, because what works for me might not necessarily work for other people. Also, my hands are kind of small. This glove is a small size glove, like size 7 small. So I've got tiny hands. Trying my best to hold on to underneath so that can't feel any of the stress I'm introducing to it. Now, one annoying issue is because these are right next to each other, I'm inevitably going to run into this with this one, or run into this with that one. So that's always going to be fun. And again, like I said, it's the initial movement that's the hardest. Okay, it's starting to move. I was able to stop just in time from using too much force and getting it to hit all the way at once. There we go, now it has moved. So I'll go ahead and try my best to do that little bit of movement again, back and forth. So you can tell it can't move all the way yet, because this is in the way, but it can move to there. So I can do that and loosen it up to that point at least. So that should help, right? Then, just carefully extend that one. Then we can rinse and repeat on this finger. So first off, this one, I want to move down like that. And I can start trying with this. Again, you just got to be careful. I got it. There it went. I think it did hit and bounce back a little bit, but there it is. So now I can try to just practice moving it a little bit that way, loosen up a bit. And now that's 2 more done up to that point. Okay, so again, you just want to make sure you are aware of which gates attach to which fingers. So if I remove this gate, then I can freely move these 2 fingers. If I were to remove this gate, it would loosen these two fingers. However, this finger has yet to be loosened at all. And so to benefit from everything being held in place, it would make sense to go ahead and loosen this one. Now to do that, I'm going to want to remove not only this right here, but because of how it moves, I may need to remove this as well. Which, in turn, means I may need to go ahead and remove this. So that's going to be my approach now. We'll be removing a bunch of different stuff, but it will benefit me the most with the progress I have made. So let's go ahead and start here. So there's that. And I'm going to go ahead and move this a little bit. Now the reason I'm doing that is to create more free space for me to use these nippers to remove this, which was also the whole reason I removed that right now. There we go. Nice clean cut, thanks to the SPN 120s. Now again, I'll go ahead and remove this simply because of where it's at. Trying to orient in a way that's easier for me. There we go. Let me put these back up here real quick. Because next, whipping out the hobby knife again. So pay attention to what was just removed. So I removed one from here. I forget exactly where it attached. May have been right on this, which means it doesn't really matter. Keeping in mind that I won't actually be using this part because of what the instructions show me to do later. Anyway, so next up is this right here. So first off, I'll use my finger. I do feel an ever so slight roughness to it, so I will go ahead and try to use this a bit to flush that out. Again, I'm not trying to do a whole lot with this, but that did the trick. It is now flushed out the way I wanted. So the next spot was the fingertip, this finger here. And I can see where it was done right here. So let's see if I can deal with that somehow. I'll try going at it from the other side and see if I catch anything. There we go, got a little bit more. And there we go. There's that one ready for the next step. So we'll go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and trim this a little bit to give myself more access to this. And here's how much of that is left. So now, work on this. Like that. Again, you just repeat it multiple times. Another really important thing to consider and keep in mind as you're doing this is pay attention to the feel of doing all of this, because it will serve you well when it comes time to actually adjust all of these joints for posing and for interfacing with different accessories or however you're planning to use them. Because you're essentially just going to repeat what you're doing here to loosen all these and stuff to actually fully move everything once it's all set up. So the idea of holding on to everything except for where that one joint you're going to move is, you'll want to be doing that if you can. You know, just all these other things that you utilize while setting all this up will also be beneficial once it is set up. Okay, so fingertip should be pretty good to go now. So next up, this joint. So again, come on to this. And it's this joint specifically that's the hardest to move. I have found for these. The ball socket may be a bit similar-ish. That's harder though because of where it is, and you have to be very careful with the range of movement. Also, this thumb right here is the absolute hardest because it has an additional degree of movement. So not only do you have to loosen these two joints here, and this joint here, but this is already a ball and socket. There's another ball and socket here, and this ball that you see right here is actually half a sphere, so it can move this way along that sphere. So it can have a ball socket here, and it moves along that sphere. So this one's a bit different. That's also why I save it for last, because getting the other fingers out of the way first makes having hold on this so much easier. Anyway, back to this finger. So again, I'll try to do that here. And because of everything I freed up here, this should be able to move all the way, no problem. We almost got it. There it goes. There it went. Look at that. Next, again, just be careful and get it to go back. That's fully extended. Go ahead and do that too. You notice you can extend it a little bit farther. This part right here will not be here in the way once the thing is fully assembled. Just FYI. And this can definitely be done a lot quicker than I am doing it. I'm intentionally being slow and patient, because it doesn't matter how fast you do it in. What matters is that it is done correctly to achieve a good end result. And obviously, like anything, the more you do something, the better you'll get at it, and the less time it might take eventually. So, you know, if you build more kits that have these in it, and you know the process, then you can do it a bit faster. Okay, so that is every finger except for the thumb. All joints loosened down to the knuckle ball socket joint. So now I can freely decide which fingers I want to detach to do stuff next. So I'm going to choose these first, so I'll have to attach from here and here. So I'm going to try to reduce the surface area of this just a little bit more. And I'm intentionally trying to hold on to this so I'm not introducing forces to either finger. But I want to make this smaller so it's less weight when I actually do the cut with other things. is the idea anyways. Don't know why that won't cut all the way through. There we go. Okay, so now I can take this nipper. And there we go. Let me put this back up. And the reason I'm putting these nippers in this every single time is because there's all sorts of oil on it, and I don't want to have that get on the instruction booklet or the cutting mat or anything else. Okay. This is where, again, I get out my cut-resistant glove and see what can or needs to be done with the hobby knife. Now, because of how they're currently oriented, it may not be ideal to do this. I'm going to at least feel around and see. I will say this one feels pretty flush, actually. See what this one feels like. This one is not flush. So now I know that it's this one. Again, try to hold on to the part itself as best as I can. Again, all I'm trying to do is smooth out the roughness. That's it. Feels like the roughness needs me to go at it from this way. It's feeling pretty good. Another thing, there will be little marks and stuff on these fingers that is entirely separate from where the nub was. And so you can remove those if you want, but they aren't where the nub was, if that makes sense. So this mark right here, that's not where the nub was. There's definitely a mark right there. So I'll go ahead and see about that. It feels smooth now. There we go. So that's both of those ready now. So again, these are all fully set up to the ball and socket joint. And this is where the fun part is, because you want to loosen it fully, which means you have to do all sorts of stuff to it. So I like to start by moving it this way. So once that moves pretty well, that's great. So looking at the instructions, it says to do things at a certain point in time. And so from what I can tell, I'm not sure if... Okay, yes, so it's in the next step where it wants you to rotate them around. So I'll at least pretend to follow the instructions. That's definitely moving, so that's good. Again, I've not rotated it any direction yet. Again, it's very important to pay attention to orientation. So, you know, this is that orientation, right? And so you have to pay attention how everything's orientated before you try to rotate anything. So for example, right here, it's showing it this way, right? And so when it says rotate 90 degrees for some of its stuff, it's saying they rotate this way and this way. So it'll look like this. And this is the palm of the hand, basically, if that makes sense. Which means this would rotate this way so that this is facing here, I guess. But anyway, so that's what that would be. So next, I'll work on this finger so it can start moving a bit. There we go. Make sure you are not pulling this out. Okay, that's pretty good. So next, I would loosen these, or rather I would remove these. And if you notice, this finger right here is also held in place with this part right here. So I need to remove that as well to get that one to work. So first off, okay, where's that one gone? So this one's going to be a bit harder. I'll still use this nipper, it's very thin, so it should be quote-unquote okay. I got it. Let me clean that off. Maybe be able to see that part of it's on the blade itself. So I'll clean that off here. Cool. Okay. So there's that. Now that I've removed some more things, I can go inspect my hobby knife. Now, unfortunately, due to the current orientation, I may not be able to deal with everything as is. Some of it I can deal with for sure, like this right here. I can visually see where it is, so I should be able to figure that out a little bit. That should be that one. Okay, now check this one. Feel a little bit. It should be good. It just leaves this right here, which I should be able to get. Because you'll want to get that before you try to move that into place anyway. I won't be able to show what I'm doing easily, but on this part right here, I'm removing the excess now. Okay, and I can try to observe where it was attached from the other side. Let's do a joint thing, so I don't think I need to do anything with that. Okay, that should be that ready. Reorientate so it's where we want it to be. So next, focus on this one. And again, pay attention to which way it is oriented. So that way, you can do that. Now this joint feels kind of tight. It does not move as freely as the others did. There it is. Moved it back and forth a little bit, so at least that part's a bit loose as intended. Next up, try to do the same with this one here. Yeah, it's moving quite nicely as well. And again, the ease of the movement of these is also part of why I preferred to leave these gates on for as much of this process as possible. Okay, so I believe that's everything except for this thumb. So I will need to remove a good chunk of this. So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut here, and then I'll cut here to be able to remove the excess of this. Thought that had cut all the way, it hadn't, so that's an oopsie. There we go. So removing that frees up being able to move this one as well as this one. Again, I'll go ahead and get out my hobby knife so I can go ahead and prepare that, get that out of the way. All right. So again, the thumb is different. So I'll start with tip again. That works pretty well. And then the ball inside the socket is very stiff. You can't just freely move it. Okay, it's slowly moving a little bit. There we go. It's now moved. Should be able to then. There we go. Look at that. Isn't that a nice degree of movement? So I will go ahead and practice moving it a little bit more. Again, you don't want to apply any force that will have it be pulling out. There it is. So that is that done. So last up is what I consider the most annoying and also nerve-wracking. So I need to go ahead and remove these. Let's see, I'm trying to decide which one I want to go for first. I'm trying to move this part out of the way. Okay. This might be the way to do it, actually. Trying to observe where it's flat and where it's actually going. We'll pretend that worked. Okay. So there it is. It definitely looks a bit different now, doesn't it? Compared to this one. Definitely looks a bit different now. I'm gonna get my hobby knife out. Okay. So right here, I can feel a bit of something, sort of see it as well. It actually feels pretty good. Last up is this part. Again, I'm just trying to make sure it's flush and smoothed out. I don't care about the visual darkening. Okay, and there it is. So now, I can work on the last parts of the thumb. First, I'm just looking to see what the instructions say, because the instructions don't really say what to do with the thumb. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm still at this thing here. So again, working on the thumb, we can do this pretty well already. Moving that, which is great. So, I'm not sure which I want to do first. I feel like I tried it one way and felt like I didn't like it. So then I tried it the other way, but I also didn't like that. So it didn't feel like one way was better or the other. So there's two different joints that I now need to move. One of them, you can very easily see, is the ball and socket. Goes into the base of the hand. The other one is harder to see. Trying to see if I can orient this in a way that will show what I'm talking about. I don't think I can, sadly. It's not going to pick up on camera. So basically, like I said earlier, this ball that you see here is a half sphere, and so it's, you know, like two halves of a sphere, and then they can move around. And so basically, without this aspect of it moving, this can rotate. And so I need to loosen that, obviously. And so that's where some of the struggle comes from. And so it is sort of a socket on this side in terms of what is actually going to be doing the rotating. I also it's hard for me to tell visually which side is which, but I'll just see what I can do here. And I really hated this part of it, because you have to actually move the thumb a little bit on it for it to be oriented normally. It's just, it sucks. You can sort of tell here that, you know, it's pretty exposed, right? But it needs to be able to move along that. So I guess I can try to do this. As you can tell, it's quite exposed. That ball in the socket is quite exposed. So again, the concern is, well, then how do you do that? Because of it being a ball and socket, you can't hold it in place firmly to be able to freely rotate that like you can the other parts, right? And so that's why I sort of saved the thumb for last, because this specific joint to loosen is, it's like, where do you hold on to keep the main ball and socket from moving? You can't. There isn't really anywhere to hold on to. So you can sort of do that, I guess. It's just, it sucks. The amount of force you have to apply, and then also, it doesn't really tell you, by the way, which way it can move. And that's the other fun part. So let's see here. So it's saying that you would rotate this way. The reason I'm doing that is I'm trying to get a feel for how it's supposed to be able to move, right? I actually don't know. I don't know if it's centered where it can move 90 degrees both ways, or if it is stuck in one position and it can only move 90 degrees one way. I have no idea. But it's supposed to be able to move one of the ways. It is moving. I got it. If you notice, it is slightly different position now. There it is. You can sort of see that it has definitely moved a little bit. Look at that. Doesn't that look closer to how it theoretically should be? And so that's the way it can move. So next, I'll see if I can move it back. I can. I'm not going to be too crazy with moving it that way because it feels like it might be stopping. Nope, it's not. Okay. Okay, so yeah. As you can tell, that's the thumb now the other way around. I'm trying to see if I can loosen it enough that I can then move it independently of having to move that. I sort of can. So there it is. Isn't that crazy? I think it's mostly crazy because the instructions don't really mention that it can do that anywhere, but it can. So there it is. And we'll say that's now good to go. Okay, so at this point, I've essentially done everything. And can move on to other parts of the instructions. So it is wanting me to go ahead and move this down. Now, one thing to keep in mind, I did show this earlier, but later on in the instructions, it is wanting me to take that part out as the first step for adding this part. So it is wanting to use the ball and socket from this as opposed to one from this. I don't know why, and if I'm perfectly honest with you, I don't see why I couldn't just remove this instead and therefore use that one. But if you notice, it does look like this is bigger. So there's definitely a reason for doing it that way. And I imagine I can just check right down just to prove a point. Look at that. See how big that hole is? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Yeah, so for sure you can't. But this does work. Like, I would need to put effort into putting that into place. So I will for sure have to remove this part. The thing is, by looking at the instructions and knowing that I have to remove that later on, it becomes a question of, is there a benefit to leaving it in for here? Now that I don't know. However, again, I'm building a Master Grade Extreme Strike Freedom, and I would say all the steps up to where you add this should be universal for the other kits, and therefore I will just follow these instructions for informational purposes, I guess is the wording. So I will start by doing this. Again, just make sure the orientation is correct, and make sure you're holding on to something that doesn't move and can't move. You're going to be applying force. I'm also just going to go ahead and say this. If I somehow accidentally mess up and this comes out, I'm not putting it back in, because the directions have me take it out later anyway. Oh! Maybe that's it. Yeah, that could be it. So visually, I'm not sure what shows up. There's something on this part, right? Which means that it's going to quote-unquote interfere with this being able to go downward. So if I remove that, I can more easily put it downward. I will try a few times to put it downward as is. Oh, it worked. As you can tell, it's already going in all the way. And whabam, there it is. And then it uses this ball and socket right here to be able to move a little bit. Okay, so that is to that. Let's see here. Let me go ahead and move this back up to the way it's supposed to be. Now it is saying that it wants me to move these fingers up this way. Probably to create space to rotate these two around. That's sort of what it's showing. So it only wants you to put this part in place and then rotate these two fingers, which I believe would be these two fingers, referencing a human hand. And again, we're seeing the palm, the open palm is the idea. So you just have to pay attention and realize that this is the opening for this side. So to reach the palm, it would rotate this way. Trying to move this out of the way a little bit here. Like that. Gonna go ahead and move this a little bit. Cool. So that should be good to go now. Just for giggles. Try that. Because remember, now that they're fully loose, you can move them all the way. And you can do that. Now obviously, once you have everything that looks, you know, like a human hand, it's going to be harder because you don't have as much space to hold on to things with. And that's where you could use something like tweezers or whatever. Or these or whatever. I'm not sure how good of an idea that is, but you know, you get the idea. It's possible to use something that's thinner than your fingers to hold on to something to give yourself the space to move things where you're supposed to. So next, once this finger. So here's one other thing I do. As you can tell, this finger, I don't know which one this is. I believe it's this finger right here. This is that finger. Anyway, so I move this and angle it to be over here a little bit. Why am I doing that? So I can create space to more easily rotate this one around. And looky there. So then I want to do the same thing I was doing with the other one. I want to move it a little bit. Again, try to get a feel, tactile feel for where it's wanting to stop and try not to hit that area or go beyond that area. You don't need it to move all the way that it possibly can. As, like I said, the risk of things popping out of his sockets is present. Don't ignore that risk. So next, go ahead and practice fully extending this again. Cool. So that's these two fingers done. The way it was wanting me to do it, according to this here. So as you can tell, we're making great progress now. So next, let me orient this. You can see better. Okay. So next up is wanting to move these downward, but do not rotate them yet. That's what it's wanting me to do. Okay. So I will go ahead and do that because this is in the way of this part. So I can do that. And do that. So that's how it's wanting it to go, right? And then it's wanting this part to go into here. Now we'll go ahead and say this was another spot I struggled with. This part right here is actually kind of tight, and it takes some annoying force to get it to go into here, and it takes similarly annoying force to get it to go back out. Let me look at some instruction and stuff here. This may only be relevant to what I'm building, Master Grade Strike Freedom, and may not apply to others, but on Master Grade 3.0 RX-78-2, I am using those hands, and I am holding accessories with them. And there was a specific position that part needs to be in to hold those. And by knowing what the position is now, I can pre-position it and not have to put it in its neutral state and then move it back out again. Because that's annoying, right? Bear with me here. Okay, let me move this around here so I can show better. Okay, so here we are, and it's showing some stuff. So it's showing that on the movable hand, if you do not want to take the static hand and replace it, then you move the peg thing into a deployed state where it's facing palm up, so it'd be sticking out that way, and do that to interface with the beam saber where it slots in. Actually, I believe I have one right here. Hold on, I believe it's on the other side. Yeah, you see that opening there? That's where that part of the hand would slot into place. And similarly, well, poopy. So it looks like for the rifles, it's entirely different. So, see here, it shows that there is a part in the palm of the hand that's a peg that goes into a hole on the grip of the beam rifle. So I assume the other hand would be the exact same way, which means it is probably possible to hold these with the movable hands, but there will be nothing holding them up apart from just the fact that you're having them closed around it, right? So there is nothing for it to lock into place or anything. So it looks like if the goal is to use the beam rifles on Master Grade Extreme Strike Freedom, you can't really use the movable hands depending on the type of pose you're trying to do. So might be able to use them, might not, but that's something to keep in mind. Now that I know that it would be a certain way to use the beam saber, I may pre-position to use it with the beam saber. Is basically what my thinking is right now. Okay, moving back, the instructions. We're right here, right? Here is the hand. Here it is, here's palm out. So let's see how well this moves on its own. More specifically first. Okay, I still feel that there is something from the nub. This needs to truly be flush to more easily go in and out of that slot, especially the first time. And again, trying to reduce the amount of stress you apply to these is imperative. So let's see here then. It's like there's a seam line on it, and the thing itself is on that seam line. I think I finally got it. Alright, we'll pretend really hard that that's done now. Okay. So again, it's palm up. trying my best to hold on to something that's not going to move. See if I can get this to move. I am getting it to move, so that's cool. Okay, so that is now in the position it would need to be in to use with the beam saber, basically. So I can't actually easily do that, so that's great. A little plastic sticking out from there. Now, of course, the fun thing is getting it to go back out. Now, there's a part sticking out of it, but it's cleaning. You can just use a thumb or something, be able to encourage it to go back out. But I had tried that on my other kit, the RX-78-2 version 3.0, and it didn't really work. What I ended up doing, which I'll just do here too, to show how I do this, is needing to use tweezers. So let's see if I can. I don't think I can get the. Yeah, I can't. So if you have something that's thin enough and not sharp, you could do that, but I have to use anyways because I don't have anything like that. If you go near the top, the less force required. Just like that, it's moved back out enough that you can easily move it the rest away yourself. Now, as you might imagine, it's going to be a lot easier to do that if the hand is not attached to the arm. I had to drink something because my throat was dry. Alright. Anyway. So I will go ahead and just follow the instructions and put this back. And actually, I'll go ahead and move it out again. Treating this like the various joints, where by moving it multiple times, I'm going to make it easier to move it later on. Look at that, I was able to get out all on my own. Isn't that cool? So there we go. We'll say that's done. Okay. So next, the instructions, we move on to these two steps. So it now wants me to rotate these 90 degrees, so we'll start with this one right here. Feeling a lot of friction, but again, just take it slow. Be careful of where force is applied. And looky there, that's the correct orientation. So next, I'll practice moving it. Now it was either this finger or this finger that I had issues with falling out of the socket on the second hand of the RX-78-2 version 3.0. Anyway, so again, you don't want to go too crazy with it. Try to do that real quick. Cool. So next, and lastly, is this one. So again, I prefer to have it be, give myself enough space to do it. So where this instructions shows that you move it down to this position and then do it, I'm doing it sort of in this position, kind of, because it's easier for me, and it's still within the degree of freedom movement that the ball socket has, so I don't believe it causes unnecessary stress on anything. Also, as you have seen me do, I find that it goes better if I hold on to the finger itself and then move the base of the hand where I want it to move. And I feel like that works better. Anyway, so there that is. So next I just try and adjust this. Loosen that up a little bit. And there we go. So next, wants me to go ahead, move this downward. Whoops. Okay, now we're getting a lot closer. So next, let's see here then. So it's showing a checkpoint. Moving this so you can see it better. Okay, the finger joints are designed to be firm for better durability. Hold down at their base and move one finger at a time along the dotted line. So where I had already done all this loosening of stuff, that's essentially what it's talking about doing. And it's wanting you to go ahead and create this fist with it. Which is funny, because it then immediately, in the next step, for this assembly, shows it not in that position at all. Okay. So, trying to get to where I can move my nipper out of the way. I will go ahead and do this. So it is basically saying that it wants you to hold down at your base, do that. Again, you want to hold down everything apart from what you're trying to move, as best as you can at least. And remember, you can always spread them out to make it easier on you, so you can access each individual finger. Also, depending on the finger and what you're trying to do, it may be easier to curl the fingers up first before moving the final ball socket at the base. Now we have two that are like that. Move that one a little bit so it's out of the way. And I can try to move this one to be back. It's supposed to be. And then... Oh! Oh. I see now. I see what it's trying to do. I completely forgot about that. Okay. So there is another joint at the ball socket, and that's what it's referring to. You can even see that it exists. So bear with me here. Let me get all these to go back out. I see now why it was wanting you to hold it a certain way. Okay, let me move these out of the way here. Okay, so it's right here. Let me get a toothpick so I can better point. So it is referring to, as you can tell, right here, these darker parts. Those are joints where it can move. So you can move along those joints. You can see right here the ball socket is still facing downward, while this has been fully extended inward. So on these, that's this right here. You know, you can see those a little bit. And so it's showing to hold it a certain way. And so that is what I will now try to do. And this is where it's hard, because the ball might try to move out of socket. Remember the struggles I had with the thumb and moving that, sort of going to be a similar approach to that. Let's see here. Again, I'll try my best to show what I'm doing, but for this specific step it might not be as easy. I think I got it. Look at that. Okay. So there it is. Again, you want to do it multiple times to make sure it's properly loosened. Move that out of the way, it's distracting me. I'm not sure what I can say about this step. I mean, you hold, again, below where you want it to move, which for this, if we're looking at upwards this way, everything from here is below. Then you hold on to the base, the palm part of the hand, and you can sort of move in opposite directions with each. So sort of hold this one in place and move downward a little bit and then rotate this way while holding this one and trying to move that up. You can create this unique effect where it allows the ball socket to stay in place while also applying force to the disc part, which will then rotate. Is the best way I can describe it, I guess. And again, you just want to make sure that you're only applying force to one thing at a time, if possible. There we go. So that is one finger done. So now I can try to more freely move that out of the way. So then I can try to do the next finger. I try to have the tip of my finger be up against the base of the ball in the socket to try and help encourage it not to go out. But due to the nature of how small that is, it's very difficult to really get a good hold on, so I'm not sure I'm succeeding at all on that. You move it out a little bit, might be able to encourage it to move a little bit more. I don't think it's moved at all yet. There you go, you got it to move. Remember that initial first movement is going to be the hardest because that's when it requires the most force. And everything after that's just loosening it a bit more. Trying to get it to go all the way. That looks pretty good. Then move it back. Okay, cool. And then again, you want to do it multiple times. You can tell that was a lot easier. And like I've said for the other parts, pay attention to what it feels like to do this and figure out what you're supposed to do to make it work. And you can repeat that process when it's all done and assembled. And you should be able to adjust these for posing however you want. Okay, so that is never finger done. Again, try my best to move it out of the way. Now we have to work on another finger. There's only 2 fingers left on this hand for this, because we're already completely done with the thumb, which shockingly has 0 instructions for moving it that way I did earlier. So anyway, trying to keep that where it is. And only apply force the way it wants you to. I got it. It finally moved. There we go. Next, I just do my best to loosen it up a little bit. I feel confident now that that one's good to go. All right. Let me move this thumb out of the way a little bit. Let me move these out of the way. All right, last finger. So for this one, because of it being angled on a corner, I can sort of try and hold it in place if I ever. I'm not sure how good an idea that is though. I'm really trying my best not to apply too much force. It's awkward because it definitely needs some force. So it's just slowly trying to increase the amount of force you use without doing too much and hoping that eventually it loosens, basically. Okay. Still nothing yet, but we're getting there, I'm sure. I think I just saw it move a little bit, maybe. Oh no. Okay, so this is what I was talking about. So because it's at a corner, there is basically less of the socket, and so it's a lot more exposed. Now the good news is, now that this has happened, I can more easily do this. So let's go ahead and do that then. So now I'm holding the finger still, applying more of a force to the socket itself, the ball itself. Try and get that to move. Doesn't want to now. It doesn't particularly want to move. I think I got it though. No, I don't think it's moving at all. Okay. No, it's definitely moving, so that's good. Here we go, got it. Now you just move it a little bit. This one doesn't have a big degree of movement compared to the others. So that's already as far out as it can go, so you just do that a few times. Okay, so that's that finger done. And now, I have to put it back in place. So, like I was saying near the start of this, the sockets can easily become too wide for the balls, and therefore the ball part of the ball and socket joint won't easily stay in place. And this one and this one have the highest risk of issues because the opening has more surface area, right? So there's less holding it in place. So let's see if I can put this back in place. It doesn't matter if I orientate it because I can just, there we go. So now it's back in place. And then you just do that. And so far it's staying in place, so we're good to go. Now that I have fully adjusted and loosened everything it wanted me to, I can now work on Master Grade Extreme Strike Freedom specific instructions. And for this specifically, it wants the right hand, wants me to remove this part so that we attach this, and I believe this is the correct one. Yeah, it should be the correct one. Okay. So I'm not sure how this comes out, if I'm being honest. In fact, I'm shocked it even has you take this out at all. But I assume it's the same issue of because this ball and socket. Oh look, came out so easily. That's both good and bad. There it is. Okay, so then wants me to put this in its place. Now I'm not sure I'm doing it. No, that was correct. I mean, it went in place, right? So. Let's see here then. With this on, can I put this into place? I can. Okay. So next, I'm going to move the instructions. See if I can figure out which way is the right hand. I believe this is the right one. Okay. And it wants me to put this into place. Again, make sure you're not holding on to and applying force. Things that move. There it is. It's now in place. So next, this is where, like I said, not really being able to more freely access each finger individually can become annoying, because remember, you don't want to apply force to the wrong thing. So you really struggle, and that's also why it's so important to loosen these as you go. And it was wanting this. Somehow go across that. And there it is. Curled up fist. Woohoo! And then, for the added special, because these hands take so long and are so annoying, why not flip them off too? Right? Haha. Okay, I'm probably going to end the video guide here. I believe I have sufficiently shown everything I wanted to show. It has been basically 2 hours. But there it is. The right hand is done. The index finger did come out of the socket, that I was able to put it back into place. Here's what the left hand looks like. Get an idea what the original is, or what its original state is. All right. Thank you for tuning in to this guide. I hope this has helped you with setting up these emotion manipulator hands. If you have any questions or concerns, comments, complaints, whatever, don't hesitate to ask in the replies. I will try to keep an eye on those over time and answer as best as I can. You can also check out my Discord server. You can find a link to that under my YouTube profile. So thanks for tuning in, and I will catch you all later.